But now, on the topic of anti-Israel, Robert, 2 years into this conflict, and I was having this discussion with family, 2 years into this conflict, we're getting a resolution, which is basically what the resolution should have been on the 8th, except pretty much all the hostages are dead. Gaza is decimated, and whether or not that was the plan, when people said, well, the plan is just to decimate Gaza, and on the 9th and the 10th, they said, no, that's an anti-Semitic thing to say. They're just going to go in and take out Hamas. So here's the rubble of what was Gaza back to you. Here are the remains of the hostages. Maybe 20 are alive, and Hamas must disarm. People looked at me like I was an idiot the day after, saying there's been a catastrophic intelligence failure at all levels of the Israeli government right now. You can't rely on the same people who were at the helm of that catastrophic failure to now determine a pinpoint strike or an appropriate military response. So they're going to release a bunch of hostages now from prison. Israel is, which is what basically give them back all of whoever they want from prison on October 8th. Get your hostages back live on October 8th. Instead of what will now amount to have been 2 years of devastation, PR devastation for Israel, actual devastation for Gaza, and you've got a tenth of the living hostages who have been through 2 years of life-altering hell, and everybody who ever had a theory about what was the underlying motivation here, was it to decimate a bigger buffer zone of the Gaza? They're going to say, "I told you so." And what was accomplished? I think not very much. But what do I know? The peace deal is out, Robert, or the ceasefire is out. They're going to return the remains of some of the hostages, the remaining living hostages. Israel's going to release a bunch of Palestinian prisoners, and you can go back to a wasteland. It's good that there's a ceasefire, and we'll hope that both sides respect it. Donald Trump deserves all the credit that the left is not giving him. But what's your broader take on this deal and where it goes from here?
So, credit to President Trump for finally putting pressure on Bibi Netanyahu. My view was that was the pressure point. That's who he had leverage with. It didn't appear clear to me that he had leverage with Hamas, that it appeared to me he had leverage with Bibi, and that he just needed to use it. And he was reluctant, it seemed, to use it. And there was concerns because part of the hard right in Israel that Bibi Netanyahu was effectively forced into a coalition with, thanks to the Israeli left, obsessing over imprisoning him over champagne and cigars. I think that was a mistake by the Israeli left. But if you have any doubts about who Israel thanks for this peace resolution, just watch the live presentation where Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Ivanka Trump are present. And anytime Trump's name was mentioned, they cheered righteously. And anytime Bibi Netanyahu's name was mentioned, he was booed. Even Witkoff was like, please stop booing. Please stop booing. That gives you the sense that many people in Israel were very unhappy about this tactical approach. Thought that it didn't work. Thought it would just lead to Israel being a pariah in the court of public opinion, and that ultimately Israel's security and safety depends, at least in part, on the court of public opinion. So either way, now this proposal initiated from the Arab Gulf states, where people want to know where Trump feels the most comfortable. Probably anywhere in the world with any foreign leader, it's the Gulf states. He relates to them, connects to them. He thinks like they do in many respects. There was always controversy over him doing a deal with Qatar to guarantee Qatar's security and also allow Qatari pilots to train at a U.S. military base that Laura Loomer misconstrued into thinking the Qataris were going to place a military base here. But one point, by the way, is if for all the Americans outraged by that, in fact, they're not placing a Qatari military base here. Think what the rest of the world thinks when we put our military bases all over their country.
Let's open up a small parenthesis here, because that was it was not necessarily part of the deal, but it's contemporaneous with it, and it's arguably.
I think it was a necessary precondition.
Yeah, so we're going to, I'm going to include myself in America right now. I want to say we are going to train Qatari fighters to fly F-15s. Now, in our community, we've got a number of veterans, and there was some disagreement as to whether or not F-15s can be nuclear payloads, and I've been told both yes and no, but by people I like and trust. Set that aside. Training Qataris to fly F-15s. I can imagine in the wake of 9/11, where our ally was Saudi Arabia, and 22 of the 24 terrorists were Saudi Arabian, if you believe the FBI people. Like the conspiracy in 9/11 was not that Saudi Arabians did not fly the planes, and it might have been who else knew or ought to have known or could have done something about it. Set that aside.
Tucker's doing a good series on that. And guess whose name comes up? Well, Bolton's going to get indicted. Comey's been indicted. Big Tish been indicted. Fani Willis is under grand jury investigation in the the Northern District of Georgia. But let's get John Brennan indicted, because John Brennan's fingerprints are all over what happened on 9/11.
Now, the question is this, though. Is it wise to train Qatari fighters to fly F-15? So the joke in the chat was, are they going to train them to land? But is it wise, or is it potentially dangerous to train?
Well, we have a mutual defense agreement with them. So, I mean, that ship kind of sailed with that. And why do we have that now? Why is it now signed off? There's two reasons. One, we want control of the Middle East, right? I mean, that's why we got troops in all over the place. We have a big base in Qatar already. The same in Saudi Arabia. It was the number one reason why bin Laden cited for attacking the United States was our U.S. military bases near Mecca and Medina, in the most holiest of sites in Islam. The reason we do it is, can the Saudis complain when let's say we go attack Iran or somebody else? Not really. They don't have any independent real military. Their military is us. So that's why we leverage that control. I personally am not a big fan of our military bases being in more places than the Roman Empire was spread out through its then civilization. So that's why it's there. So once you have a military security agreement like that, you're going to train them somewhere. You're going to train them either in Qatar or you're going to train them here. There's certain kinds of training that's safer to do, frankly, here than it is to do there. So it's whether you agree or disagree, I think, fundamentally, with whether we should have these mutual defense pacts in the first place. But we had to sign this to keep Qatar in the game because they're our main mediator on the Middle East, because we've foolishly sabotaged our relationship with Russia, who would be a much more logical mediator with someone we don't have to sign a mutual defense agreement with to use their mediation skills. It appears Russia has successfully mediated us not going back into Iran. That Putin got Bibi to say, hey, no, we don't want to escalate. We want to de-escalate with Iran and let Iran know we want a peaceful resolution to any issues we have with Iran concerning their nuclear weapons program. They would be the more logical partner in that regard. But we've cut a deal with the Royals. I get it. I mean, that part of Trump's whole path was use the Abraham Accords and the Royals to break through the Palestinian support in the Middle East, in the Arab and Muslim worlds, because they all hate Hamas. But they all share in common. Only Turkey, because Erdogan has a lot of backing from the Muslim Brotherhood there in Turkey, and Hamas is fundamentally a Muslim Brotherhood-based organization. And Qatar has sympathies with the Muslim Brotherhood. That's where some of those allegations concern. But Qatar is mostly trying to be the Switzerland of the Middle East. They want to be the place that resolves the disputes and mediates disputes. That's why they jump into all of this in multiple capacities. Though I don't trust them because of a range of topics. But we've decided to go into business with, and the Saudis and all the rest. The premise with the Abraham Accords is that if you could get the Arabs and the Royals on your side, you could further not only isolate Iran. That's only partially worked because they've had effectively a détente rapprochement, the Saudis and the Iranians, after 50 years almost of hatred of one another, dating back to the Iranians, the Ayatollah wanting to overthrow all royals and claiming they were illegitimate, as well as the Sunni Shia split. But you look at what he's trying to do is use those Arab states to recreate. His pitch is this: if Qatar, UAE, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, you want tourism, you want foreign investment. Well, you can't have your countries associated with Allah Akbar. Here comes the bomb. So you need to disassociate from terror in every significant respect. And part of that means you need to have reasonable relationships with Israel. You need to recognize Israel. You need to deal with Israel. You don't need to live in the 1950s mindset. And so consequently, that's who was promoting this, along with Egypt, along with Jordan, along with other countries. They despise Hamas. They want Hamas out. That's why they were eager to use this peace resolution to disarm and destroy Hamas's power base. Now, what does Hamas do as soon as they get back in? They start murdering other Palestinians, because that's what Hamas does. Like the Dave Smiths and the Glenn Greenwalds and the rest, Max Blumenthal's would have a lot more credibility if they would call out Hamas when they do this horrible, evil garbage. But they generally don't. They're generally mute.
So the videos are circulating, and I'm as not skeptical, but I don't know what's going on in these videos, and people are passing them around saying that this is what's going on, and you have no way of knowing. The videos that are going around now purport to be Hamas coming in and basically killing what's the word I'm looking at? Suspected collaborators and political opposition. And this is a way that
their control, right? When they're going to give up their arms. So we'll see. I think the skepticism in Israel is whether Hamas will really disarm. I can tell you though, Trump is committed to this deal. He's made it clear he's personally committed to this deal, which means in the official representation of Hamas was as long as Trump held up his word, they would hold up their word. And they trusted Trump in ways they did not trust Bibi Netanyahu, given the circumstances. And so I think there is a great opportunity for for this to hold, but it's going to depend ultimately. I think I know a lot of the anti-Israeli people will focus on Israel, but it seems to me Trump has got them in line, has been able to discipline Bibi and used his attack on Qatar to do it. Part of why we had to cut that deal with Qatar or Qatar, depending on how you pronounce it. Is because of that attack by Israel on the Hamas negotiating team. He went too far, and Trump can read polls like anyone else, and he has Barron and other people that are at least sufficiently wired into young people to know that Israel is becoming a political pariah amongst many Americans, including the young right, the young populist right. People like Owen Schroyer and others. Dinesh D'Souza was in a debate with Owen this week, and at times I thought Dinesh was going a little far, was wrong in some of his criticism. To Dinesh's credit, he's going to debate Owen right on his show, the Owen Report. You can find it on YouTube, Rumble, some other places. Looks like Owen has been able to get back on YouTube. Great, congrats on that. But so he read and he understood that, and particularly the Royals. The Royals are his leverage point into the Middle East. It's the Trump peace path. And I think it makes the most sense of anything else. And so I think he'll do everything possible to hold this up. And I think Hamas has far less support than I think people suspect in the past. The fact that they're having to do this violence against other Palestinians, that tells me, so you are so fearful of whatever limited power base you still had with the Palestinians that you got to go execute your Palestinian opponents right away.
But that's how they coerced control in the first place. I'm just looking at, they haven't had elections.
I think they're hated in large parts of the Palestinian. It's just a sense. It's a sense from various pro-Palestinian commentators. That not only are they complete. Alexander McCorris of the Duran pointed this out right away. Said Hamas is hated throughout the Arab and Muslim world. He's absolutely right about that. The second part is they're now losing the Palestinians. That they look back on what happened in Gaza and say the October 8th attack was a complete disaster for the Palestinian cause. Mm-hmm. And I think that they haven't done anything. If they had confidence, they had popular support, they'd hold elections. Right? They haven't held any since they first got in. That tells me that they don't have any popular base of support, that it is shrinking rapidly. So I think as long as Trump holds everybody to account, I think he can get a deal done. I think he can get this deal all the way through. And then I can tell you where it's going. I agree with Steve Bannon. This is going to go to a two-state solution. It's only whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years. Your biggest hurdle is still going to be the Palestinian population, because most surveys now, how reliable a survey is in Gaza, given what's happened to the people in Gaza and mass displacement over the last 2 years, I think is up in the air. But I would note, by the way, the more anti-Hamas groups, when they pulled the West Bank versus this used to be the reverse. It used to be Hamas was hated in the West Bank, supported in Gaza. Now it's reverse, which tells you that there's even Hamas recognize the fact that Hamas even took this deal tells me that they are recognizing that they're on borrowed time politically. And so I think if Trump pushes it through and keeps his eye on the ball, that he can keep a peace in Gaza, which would be a fantastic achievement, an extraordinary achievement. And I think it was because what we talked about early on, the pressure point really was Bibi. It was getting Bibi to disown what the hard right wanted, which is a greater Israel project, which was to ethnically cleanse Gaza, which was to take over and annex the West Bank. Trump was never on board with any of that. And
some might argue he might have implicitly or suggested he was by saying, well, we can build hotels there and turn it into a beautiful international destination. It wouldn't be greater Israel. It would be.
Well, he thinks that. I think he still thinks that. But he thinks he can create a wealthy paradise for the Palestinians. And he believes if he does, that they'll have something to look forward to other than hating Israel. Because that's the way Trump's brain thinks. He's like, hey, make somebody rich and they'll forget about wanting to murder people. That's why he doesn't understand the mullahs. And other people like these hardcore religious fanatics. Trump just finds them irrational and crazy. He just can't understand that logic. But he really, I think, thinks that if they made Gaza a place where there was economic prosperity, it just had to be controlled by someone other than Israel, because otherwise the Palestinians would never accept it. Now, the open question is whether they accept it. I hope they finally do and get over their 80-year hatred of Israel, which has animated the Palestinian political cause ever since the beginning of the fighting a century ago. I think it's the only future for the Palestinian cause. There is no right to return future. It's never going to happen. That ship has sailed. You can think it's right or wrong, politically or otherwise. It's gone. It's finished. It's done. You got to move on from that. A two-state solution, I think, could work if that two-state solution wasn't run by Hamas. And that's the universal consensus of pretty much everybody: Arab world, Muslim world, global South, America, West, you name it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the concern is it won't be Hamas. It'll be another iteration of Hamas. It'll be what the Mujahideen.
Well, that's what they're trying to create, a professional class that involves a lot of Egyptian, Indonesian, Jordanian, even some Saudis, and some Qataris. That a lot of those crowd, and that basically they're looking to Dubai. We could create a mini Dubai in Gaza. And if we could create a mini Dubai in Gaza, now Dubai was built with a lot of slave labor imported from Southeast Asia. We'll put that aside for the moment. And a lot of things in Dubai are a whole other story. But that's, I think, the logic that Trump has. And put it this way, it's as good as any other claim I've heard made, any other argument I've heard for how you could get peace in a region where people hate each other. The Israeli hatred of the Palestinians has gone way, way high after October 7th, and it really hasn't diminished much, understandably so. That was the thing Charlie Kirk was trying to explain. It's like, I understand the mindset. I just think tactically this is ill-advised methods that they're going about doing things. We'll see. But I think it has a real chance to hold. I thought it was going to happen at a higher chance than a lot of other people thought. Most people in the geopolitical commentary community were like, both on the pro and anti-Israeli side, and those that have no bone in the fight either way, like the Duran and other people, were real skeptical that this could even get done just because of the long history of it failing. But Trump was personally invested in this. George Samueli, to his credit at the Gaggle, pointed this out. He's like, yeah, Trump's personally invested in this, and he has a close relationship with the royals. He's going to make sure this happens if it's the last thing he does. And credit to President Trump for having that commitment to peace. Like, people criticize Trump for winning the Nobel Peace Prize. I want my presidents to want peace prizes, not war prizes, peace prizes. I'm all for that. I don't care if it's ego. I don't care what's motivating it. By golly, please pursue peace. Please want peace. Please want recognition for peace. Now, not the fake Nobel Peace Prize, because all they do is promote a regime change people. I mean, that's how somebody made a ton of money in Polymarket this week, betting on that loser from Venezuela as a peace activist. No, she's not. She's a regime change activist. And they've done this 4 times in the last 8 years. I mean, as soon as they made Barack Obama a Nobel Peace Prize winner, you know what a complete joke that award is.
I think, Yasser Arafat, Nobel Prize. Yeah, he won a Nobel Prize in what year? Was awarded jointly to Yasser Arafat and Shimon Peres and Yitzhak Rabin in 1994.
Yeah, with the hope and belief that he would do it too. I hear that.
It's always. First of all, I've been told I'm stupid and naive for saying it. It has to be a two-state solution. The only question is, the right of return. Is it going to be 600,000, 6 million, or 0 if there's a separate state? And then what land do you give back? The argument is always that if you give back land and it's a two-state solution, they'll seek the destruction of Israel in 20 years' time.
Yeah. But it was on the table. In fact, here's where I agree with Dershowitz. And here, like, Dave Smith gets a lot of basic stuff wrong. Like, Douglas Murray is another prick, so I don't care what he says about geopolitics on pretty much anything. He's a war whore to the core. But if you look at like Dave Smith and others will say that it's always been the Israelis denying the two-state solution. That's just denial of history. That's just ignoring it. Dershowitz is right. He can document a half dozen times where a two-state solution was on the table, in particular in the late 90s by Bill Clinton. Tons of money, all kinds of things. And Arafat still turned it down. Why? Because he said he didn't want to get murdered like Saddam.
Yeah. But even then, the two-state solution was on the table, but Arafat wanted the right of return of all displaced Palestinians and their descendants, to which Bill Clinton said, then what do you need a state for if you want to just take over the other state?
Well, and he knew that part was never going to happen. That was my debate with Nick Fuentes, was who would you rather have nuclear weapons, Israel or Hamas? He said Hamas. Most sane people found that insane. So I did like it. Dave Smith had Nick Fuentes on, and he loved all the clickbait he got from it. He was like, but he was like, I was just trying to encourage him. Could you go a little light on the Nazi stuff? I was like, he and Glenn Greenwald get pitiful. When anybody's anti-Israel, they want to platform them and pitch them and promote them. That's when they embarrass themselves when they do that stuff. And I say this as, I think you can be both. You can be skeptical and critical of the Israeli government without becoming anti-Jewish. I disagree with Mark Robert. Sometimes confuses the two. I get it. Some boomer Jews tend to have that perception. It's just not accurate. You can be very critical of Bibi Netanyahu. God didn't pick Bibi. Okay, I don't want to hear that from you, my pro-Israeli friends. I've seen no evidence of that. And the politicians that are Israel are not the Israel of the Bible. Sorry, that's hogwash too. But at the same time, recognize the reality of what the Palestinian cause has been, which has been a murderous, terroristic cause that cares more about killing Israelis than they do boosting and helping their own population.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hope what Trump is trying to do is to superimpose a third force that could work, that comes from the Arab world, that comes from the Islamic world, that piggybacks heavily off of the royals and the wealth and prestige of the royals to create something new. He thinks in order to take away this obsessive hatred, give them something to live for rather than something to live against. And at least it's worth pursuing because it's one of the best ideas I've heard. Doesn't mean it will work, but it's a better idea than any other I've heard in the last 80 years for solving this problem.